about 16, 17 years old, I've been kind of in and around drugs.
Facebook, Twitter and Google+.
Even my mum is on social media now.
Check it in the morning, check it in the evening.
When you idealise the physical form, it makes it a complication because, of course, what you see on television is not real. What you see in the magazines are touched up.
If you change the way you live your life for a video game, then as far as I'm concerned, you're addicted to it.
Find me a problem gambler and I will find you someone who's likely to be very unhappy and whose life is in a mess.
Gaming has often been viewed as an isolated hobby, an activity in which teenagers lock themselves in their rooms for hours on end. Although there has been cases of addiction causing serious physical and mental harm, it has never been highlighted as a proper issue in the UK. Through the course of interviews, we will explore what it means to be addicted to video games and what actions being taken to help those that are affected.
So the kind of games that I play first-person shooters.
Call of Duty to Halo to Minecraft.
I'm a big FIFA player.
So I play role-playing games, I might play the odd racer.
Grand Theft Auto 5.
Play Dungeons and Dragons.
Warcraft.
World of Warcraft and whatnot.
World of Warcraft, League of Legends.
League of Legends.
A lot of League of Legends.
If you've heard a game called League of Legends.
I don't play video games that much because I'm not good at them at all, but my kid's addicted to video games.
My little brother and sister don't move out the room. They don't move out the room. They're on RuneScape, I think it's called. My brother plays FIFA, he's on COD. They just don't move out. They speak to each other through the microphone, so they don't even need to go and see their friends.
Definitely console. I don't play PC that much at all. I might pick up the odd thing on PC from time to time if it's exclusive to PC and I can't pick it up on console. But I'm very much a console player. Xbox 360 is what I play, mainly because my friends, that's what my friends have as well.
If you change the way you live your life for a video game, then as far as I'm concerned, you're addicted to it.
If you're doing it on a daily basis, certainly more than 4 hours, you're starting to get into the addictive phase.
You can have addiction to anything, and addiction is really bad. It's something that affects the way you appear to other people, it affects the way you act with other people, it affects the way you act just in general. Whereas I feel like it's very hard to get an addiction, whereas it's easy to get in a mind where you feel like you're addicted.
A behavioural addiction is when the person's behaviour starts to come to the detriment of their physical or mental well-being, socially, and to the detriment of others. It's not necessarily the game, it's the individual. It's normally the underlying issues why that person starts to engage in that game, to enter that virtual world from the real world, and the more feel-good factor they get from it, so the more the compulsion is to enter into that virtual world. So the game then starts off as seductive, but then it becomes addictive.
Certainly, I think gaming can be compulsive. I think people can play so much that it does start to affect their everyday life, and whether or not you class that as an addiction, I think I'm not the correct person. I think that's for a psychologist to say, but it's gripping. It certainly can take hold of someone, yeah.
Video gaming addiction can be defined as a compulsive disorder in which constant gaming interferes with daily life.
Parents have always said I've been pretty smart, but I've never applied myself to stuff, but mainly because it's not interested me. And if it interested me, I would have applied myself to it. And so I got mediocre to decent grades in high school, and then pretty crappy grades in college, mainly because the course was terrible. But probably it's pretty bad, to be honest, but if the games weren't invented, which they always would have been anyway, I probably would have aced most of my classes because there would be nothing else to do other than revise and whatnot.
Well, having lived with him for quite a while and seen what his gaming habits are like, they have been to the extreme.
Between you and your parents?
Yeah, it's caused a big rift in between us, and especially kind of my stepdad, because he's got his own kids, and he treats them differently than how, say, my parents treat me, so he doesn't really know how to handle me and how to handle this gaming thing.
I'm going to work during the night, coming home, going back to work, and he was only just getting up. It came to a head where we cut the internet.
When after I finished college, I had nothing to do. They started telling me to go to bed earlier because I was staying up till about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it caused a lot of trouble. And then actually, I did start going to bed a bit earlier, because then you'd get up earlier, and then I could start playing earlier and whatnot, and it helped everyone out a bit more. But then also it came up to the point where my stepdad cut the internet off, and that annoyed me pretty much, mainly because I don't really think he's got much right to doing so.
It is a worrying fact that game addiction isn't yet defined in UK medical journals. Will it be long before we see such clinics over here?
There is some help out there now. If you go on the internet, there are self-help support groups, but I would certainly like to see more official groups put together and more liaising between the agencies to help combat this.
If people want to seek help, there is help out there. There isn't much of it, but there is help out there.
But in light of the recent events where there have been acts of violence, etc., then it is being recognised that it is becoming a problem.
It's more common than you think, and a lot of people may be addicted, or they certainly are compulsive gamers, and they don't realise it, and it's certainly something that needs to be highlighted more.
I think there's problems here as well, but because they're not recognised, because they're not acknowledged in the same way that gambling, drugs, smoking is, it can be an issue, because a lot of parents who maybe feel like they've lost their children, or a lot of friends who maybe feel like they're losing their friends to gaming, they feel like they've got nowhere to go to, or they feel like they can't turn these addicts per se to these clinics or whatever. So I believe, it's something that needs to be recognised.
In the past, it hasn't been regarded as serious, and unfortunately, at the present time, the psychological and mental literature doesn't include it as being a serious addiction.
If you're on them too long and stuff like that, it does cause a lot of problems. They get naughty and snappy, and they just interact less. I think kids and games and stuff, and I think it should be limited what time they go on.
People definitely can escape in this virtual reality. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. I mean, it takes over people's lives in the real world as well.
With mobile phones giving people the chance to play anywhere, anytime, is there a risk of more people becoming addicted to video games? We visit Connect 2 Media in Manchester and see what developers have to say on this matter.
A mobile games publisher, from sort of feature phones through to tablets.
The online world almost combats it because you're more social. So you could argue that some people, when they're playing online games, although they're alone playing the game by themselves, they're actually having a social experience. So even the people who might not think they're lost into the game world could be, because although they're having a social experience online, they're still sat in their own room.
All games have to have a good hook. There has to be a reason for you to come back. But I think it's how much you play. It's down to how your brain works, as opposed to how the game sort of makes you play.
We actually get to play and experience the whole thing in the way that a player would, and even then, because we've been playing it from the start, we can't have the same sort of outlook on it as the player would. But I think that's the problem, because all these kids go to university and they just go, oh, I just like games, and then they sit and they play games on the courses and they don't put the time in, and they end up out of university with a degree that's only really relevant in these sort of fields of interactive entertainment, multimedia. And from there, they just sort of can't get the job because they didn't put the work in, which is a shame. But I just wish that people would realise earlier on, like, oh, hang on, it's not exactly what you think it is. And then if you still love it, that's great, and if not, find something else.
If gaming addiction is seriously identified, which I'm sure it will be eventually, because I mean, I've seen, you've seen them as well, these documentaries on TV where people are literally playing video games 24 hours a day and not getting away from the PC. And so for these people that have addicted personalities to the video games, I think there should be more support.
It depends what they're doing. Like if someone's going to school, college, work, then it probably is one of those things that can interfere with it, because I have come across a few people that do spend all night playing games and then it's affecting their work.
Kids that are perhaps bullied at school and they come home and what they want to do is they want to escape. So because games are a great form of escapism, they can go into these worlds where they don't face the same problems they do in real life and they can actually handle them. But the problem with this is that if this becomes like such a core component of their lives, they might not perhaps spend as much time out socialising and developing the social skills that they might need.
So you become totally immersed in the game. If your personality is one that is, predetermined to being addicted, then you have more likely a chance of being addicted to a console than I think you do through mobile. The gameplay sessions on mobile tend to be much shorter. They tend to be much more frequent, so you have a lot more sessions, and you may end up having more sessions over the life of that game than you would on console, but they tend to be much shorter, sort of drop in, drop out sessions.
I know in America there has been like some news and stuff with someone that spent like 48 hours playing a game and then ended up going to hospital and was like really ill and stuff. But I don't know if there is people that deal with that kind of area of like gaming addiction. I've not come across that.
When people are playing games, there's a lot of research going on into what's happening in the brain right now. A lot of research going on into the good elements of gaming in terms of education and its use, its valuable use in education.
The Kyoto Lounge in Manchester has introduced a new aspect to this belief, bringing a more social side to gaming.
My name's Aj. I run a Kyoto Lounge, which is a gaming bar, which is a concept of people gaming and socialising. It's just a really relaxed environment. There's a decent crowd, nothing too loud. It's people with the same common interest of gaming and just socialising. So we have a lot of gamers that maybe prior to this place being open would spend a lot of hours at home. Maybe didn't have that many friends. So it provides a basis for people to come and meet new people with like-minded things and maybe potentially have friendship groups that they wouldn't have had. So, gaming addiction, I'm not massive on the fact that it may be a problem. It's not a problem. People enjoy gaming. You do get the occasional hardcore gamer, but it's not the majority of our custom. People like playing multiplayer games. People like playing group games, co-op games. And it's not. I've not witnessed any addiction at all with people in here. It's just fun. Just like going to watch football or playing football. It's not an addiction. It's just fun. I can see how games become addictive, but the games that are addictive, they're group games that you make friends with people. You make friends online. Like in the PC room right now, we've got 5v5 in a game, which is quite an addictive game, but it is a form of socialising. Otherwise they would be at home on their own with no one to speak to. We do have a lot of people that come out of the shell when they play games with other people.
There have been cases reported in which serious harm has occurred due to gaming addiction.
It's easy to blame video games for violence in the real world. If someone is going to hurt someone in the real world, they're going to hurt someone in the real world. We had it with movies, and then it was music, and video games is just the next thing for people to blame.
There's been people who have been playing games like to a point where they're like losing sense of reality. But recently, I'm not too sure. But I do know there is a lot of kids who are playing games that aren't age appropriate. So that might be more of the parent side that maybe need to monitor to see what they're playing. Because I do think if it's an 18 and someone's 12, then the games with guns is not really appropriate for them to play.
It's the responsibility of the parents or the primary caregiver that is enforced, that's adhered to. If they don't, and the parent just buys it and lets little Johnny go off and get on his Xbox for hours on end, the gaming industry haven't really got any control over that, have they?
And I think we've created demand for highly aggressive, highly violent games in some cases, and some of it is totally unnecessary. There's ignorance on parents who don't understand age ratings and don't understand that it's legal, that the age ratings that go onto games, and therefore allow the kids to play video games that are way above their age ratings. There's also ignorance on the part of the gaming community in that they don't understand that kids are going to play these games no matter what. So I think we need to be mature a little bit about that. I think we need to have a much broader offering in the same way as cinema does, for example. I think we need to police the age ratings a lot stricter than we currently do. But I also think a huge amount of it is down to education. Education of a generation that just doesn't get it, just doesn't get gaming, and doesn't understand the implications of interactive content.
They can advise that, can't they? It's a bit like a packet of cigarettes where you say, look, smoking kills you. But of course the person still takes a cigarette and still smokes it. And it's rather like the industry where they put an 18 age group on the game. But you'll see parents will go and buy the youngsters that game regardless of what that age group says on the box. So it needs society itself to be joining together to enforce these rules, really.
So no legislation in place yet to ensure that they kind of follow, but I guess a moral code. And we're definitely seeing a shift in the last few years away from ultra-violence and into having a wider range of games. I think there's still a massive misunderstanding amongst people of a certain generation who don't understand the similarities between age ratings on games and on video, and therefore it's kind of Daily Mail brigade. These are the people who scream and shout about how violent a game is, yet the same people who go into a game shop and buy 18s games for 10-year-old kids. So there's a huge education that's ongoing at the moment globally. There is a moral code. I do believe it may have to at some point come into legislation for game developers. But I think you're starting to see a bit more balance in games now. You're starting to see, for every Call of Duty, you're starting to see games like Journey and things like that, which are definitely understanding gaming as an art form as opposed to just some form of escapism and ultra-violence.
Well, they've got to make sure it's age gate, and to do with sites like for us, like as press, we've got to make sure all the trailers and stuff that we show has got an age gate, so we don't show trailers or content to people that's not age appropriate. So we do have responsibilities to make sure people aren't getting access to stuff that's not within their age.
It all depends about the education in the individual. Some people are able to detach the violent content in a game, in a film, in a book from the real life. And I've played a lot of violent games in my time: Mortal Kombat, Black Ops, Battlefield. But I've never been arrested. I've never been warned by the law. I've never felt, I've never got into a fight. I'm not. People and my friends and my siblings will know me as, one of the most passive people around. I'll be the first person to run if there's a fight going on. So I'm not a violent person whatsoever. So
they're uncomfortable in the real world, and so they feel more comfortable in the virtual world. A shy person becomes gregarious, a passive person becomes aggressive, and of course they can role play all this without any real life consequences. But of course then when they transfer this to the real life, that's when the consequences come.
Over the last few years, video games have been a controversial subject both here in the UK and the US. This is surrounding the influence over many attacks and even murders. In 2004, one 17-year-old's obsession with video games led him to lure his 14-year-old friend into a park, then attacking and killing him with a claw hammer. For too many people, the gap separating video game violence and real-life violence is overwhelmingly small. People will always turn to video games as a means of relaxing. But the question is spending too much time living the life of a fictional character really living a life at all?